stop pretending you don't feel it. That quiet fracture inside you. The moment you traded instinct for obedience. You move on command now, chasing routines that were never yours. And beneath every achievement, every comfort, every fleeting success, something keeps whispering. This isn't freedom. It's not money you're missing. It's not love. It's command. The ability to hold your own energy instead of being drained by it. They told you this is normal. They told you it's healthy. But what if normal was the first lie that built your cage? What if your entire behavior was conditioned like a lab rat? Stimulus, reaction, release, repeat. Each cycle carving deeper obedience into your nerves. That's how the system breeds the perfect modern man. Hungry enough to chase, tired enough to obey, numb enough to forget. Desire, pleasure, emptiness, restart, endless motion without direction. Look at yourself from the outside for once. Coldly. Every swipe, every image, every instant reaction isn't a choice. It's a script. You call it willpower. The algorithm calls it data. And it knows you better than you've ever dared to know yourself. The tragedy isn't in the body. It's in the surrender. You've let the deepest part of your nature be managed by something outside of you. And until you reclaim it, you'll keep mistaking slavery for freedom. Look at your day through cold eyes. A notification, a flicker of an image, a memory ignites. Your finger slides, and you think you chose it. The truth? The choice was made seconds before your awareness arrived. Dopamine moved first, and the algorithm knows you better than you know yourself. The body isn't guilty. The mistake is letting your instincts be managed from the outside. Jung said it clearly. What you do not make conscious manifests as fate. And fate here isn't myth. It's pattern. An impulse repeated so often it begins to choose your life for you. Memorize this. Every urge you don't command will command you. Every pleasure without intention withdraws from your will. And with every withdrawal, a fragment of self-respect dies, until nothing in you resists anymore. Try to remember the last time you truly resisted an impulse. Not delayed it, resisted it. Do you remember how your perception sharpened? How your voice steadied? How a quiet confidence returned to your hands? That wasn't magic. It was your nervous system reclaiming control for the first time in years. Society didn't rot by accident. The culture of instant release turned the body into a drain instead of a generator. Ads, screens, the endless rhythm, all whisper one command. Don't hold yourself. Because a man who can hold himself can't be bought and can't be led by a signal. So I won't flatter you. The problem isn't desire. It's the direction of desire. As long as you treat it like a crying child you silence with candy, you'll remain a child, no matter how old you grow. But the moment you decide to turn every impulse into a drawn arrow instead of a leak, you take the first real step toward reclaiming yourself. This isn't a call for empty abstinence, nor moral performance. It's a call for sovereignty, to bring authority back from the screen to your own hand, from the crowd to your own decision. We'll walk it step by step, from diagnosis to method, from containment to transformation, from transformation to command. And it all begins here, by admitting you've been domesticated, and deciding to end the old training. Now, we open the first question. If the problem is the direction of desire, how do we redraw that direction without repression or preaching? There's only one way, and it demands a confrontation. Every desire in you isn't a mistake. It's an electrical signal carrying a message from your depths. You've just been trained to silence the message instead of reading it. You treat the impulse like a fire alarm you must shut off, when in truth it's an internal alert saying, "Pay attention. There's energy here that needs direction." Instinct doesn't want sex alone. It wants embodiment. It wants to be poured into action, creation, decision, proof that you exist. When it can't find that outlet, it returns to the easiest door: pleasure. And that's how the force of life gets downgraded into a habit of release. Jung saw this clearly. The sexual drive, the libido, is not just about the body, but the total impulse of life itself. When you lose control of it, you don't lose morality. You lose the very direction of your being. Each time you surrender, you send your subconscious a message that says, "I can't endure." And over time, your brain learns that willpower is an illusion. That's why your focus scatters, why your presence fades, why your thoughts turn gray, as if you're thinking through glass. Control doesn't mean repression. It means training your nervous system to wait, to feel the wave without drowning in it, to hear the body's call, but not obey it immediately, to delay comfort long enough for energy to become awareness instead of dying in pleasure. Look at modern society. Every ad reminds you you're incomplete. Every scene rewires your brain to believe that pleasure cures all pain. But no one tells you the truth, that pleasure is the shortest path to losing your will. It steals the one thing that makes you human, the ability to postpone desire for the sake of meaning. And here the real conflict begins, between the part of you that wants comfort now and the part that wants strength later. Choose the first, and you get pleasure, then nothing. Choose the second, and you gain a breath that can't be bought. When you hold yourself in a moment of fire, you create an invisible muscle, the muscle of control. Without it, no leader is forged, no man is built. So don't ask yourself to be calm. Ask yourself to be present. Watch the desire pass through you without letting it devour you. Listen to it. Analyze it. Make it tire of you before you tire of it. From that moment on, desire stops being your enemy. It becomes your mirror, the measure of your awareness. The more you master it, the more it serves you. Not through pleasure, but through creation. Look closely around you. Everything in this world is built to keep you tense, then offer you a quick escape. An entire industry, driven by algorithms, monitors your pulse, your breath, the exact seconds your eyes linger on an image. It knows when to put a body before you and when to place an ad. And both serve the same goal, to keep you needy. Modern society wasn't built on strength. It was built on addiction. Addiction to attention. Addiction to pleasure. Addiction to the fleeting illusion that you're okay. Every tap, every scroll, every flick of your thumb is a silent transaction, trading your focus for a second of dopamine. And you think you're in control, when in truth, you're a subject in an open laboratory. When you release your desire whenever they want you to, you become easier to control than a machine. A robot still needs code. You only need an image, one image, and you fall from clarity to chaos in seconds. That's exactly what they want. A man who never learns the meaning of steadiness. They don't want a thinker. They want a repeater. They don't want power that organizes itself. They want a body that consumes and asks for more. They don't sell you pleasure. They sell you control through pleasure. Jung said, "The shadow you don't face controls you from behind the curtain." And society has built you an entire curtain of seduction so you never see it. Whenever you're bored, they hand you entertainment. Whenever you're empty, they hand you a digital body. Whenever you begin to think, they drown you in noise. So you forget to ask the only question that matters. Who profits from your weakness? When you release energy into pleasure, you lose the fuel that could have ignited your awareness. They don't want you fierce. They want you distracted. They want you fighting your urges, not their system. They want you battling your hunger, not their control. And this is where it gets dangerous. When you start to believe your weakness is normal, that you're just like everyone else, that life is supposed to be work, pleasure, boredom, repeat. But something inside you knows better. It knows this cycle isn't life. It's a perfectly engineered program of consumption. Every day, you sell fragments of your will, by the second. You sell it while smiling. You sell it because someone convinced you that self-control is cruelty, and that freedom means doing whatever you want. But they forgot to mention, as long as they can do whatever they want with you. Jung once said, "Energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed." A simple line, yet one that could upend your entire way of living if you truly understood it. When you abstain, you're not punishing yourself. You're reversing the current. The energy that once ran downward, into release and waste, starts to rise upward, into action, thought, and clarity. The chemistry of your body changes, just as the language of your mind does. The same hormones once used for pleasure now fuel focus, persistence, and presence. That burning sensation in your body when you resist isn't torture. It's the signal of reconnection. What most people don't know is that instinct isn't a single line. It's a network of pathways that can be reprogrammed. Each time you give in, you strengthen the circuit that leads to pleasure. Each time you resist with awareness, you strengthen the one that leads to mastery. The difference between a slave and a free man can be no more than a single moment of resistance. But that moment repeats itself thousands of times a day. And when you hold, you begin to see. It's as if the fog in your mind starts to thin. Your thoughts sharpen, your decisions become precise, and your voice gains a quiet gravity. Not the fake confidence of performance, but the kind that comes only from mastering yourself. Every victory over impulse opens a small space within you. A sacred space. A space where fear no longer lives. Where desire no longer commands. Only will. And from that space, everything real in you is born. This is the psychological transformation Jung spoke of. Turning what once drained your life into the material that builds it. Using the same spark that burned you to light your path. It's not philosophy, it's neurological training. A rewiring of how your energy flows through your system. When you hold yourself at the edge of release, you'll feel an immense pressure demanding explosion. But if, in that moment, you breathe consciously, if you look at the hunger not as threat but as raw power, you'll feel the current change direction. The energy that once rushed to die in a brief pleasure begins to circulate. Not to leave, but to gather. And that's when the real transformation begins. You start to feel strength instead of pleasure. The strength of patience, of silence, of decision. And from that point on, you no longer fear your desire. You recognize its value. The desire you master today becomes the will that commands tomorrow. And the more aware you are of it, the more it changes. From wildfire into engineered power. Power that builds you in your image, not theirs. The moment will come when words no longer help. When the body rises against you, demanding its fix like an addict in withdrawal. You'll feel the heat rise in your chest, your breath tighten, your mind scream. Release it. Just release it, but don't. Stay there. In that space where man and animal wrestle for control. Stay standing. Close your eyes and let the fire pass through without burning you. You'll feel as if you're holding lightning in your hands, but what you're holding isn't pain. It's power. Every second you endure, your energy shifts sides, from against you to for you. Something changes deep inside your nervous system. Something no mirror can reflect. Something no science can fully describe. It's as if your cells remember an ancient function. You were never made to follow desire. You were made to command it. Patience here isn't a virtue. It's a weapon. You're training your brain to obey you, not your instincts. You're rebuilding the trust between yourself and your will, proving that you can say no and still remain whole. Every time you win this small war, something permanent shifts inside you. Your gaze grows heavier, your step more deliberate. Your voice carries a depth unknown to those who live as passengers of impulse. The pain you feel in the beginning isn't your enemy. It's the sign of crossing over. The proof that you've stepped out of programming and into the territory of the human being. Here, meaning begins. Control is no longer a theory or an aspiration. It becomes a physical experience written into your very cells, staying with you even as you sleep. Whoever survives this stage no longer needs lessons in masculinity or discipline. He has walked through fire and remained intact. And a man who has done that can never again be led the same way. When you endure long enough, you begin to see that desire isn't a wave separate from you, but a current of life searching for a direction that serves you. Everything you feared in it turns into raw material, like a fire that can cook or burn. The only difference is who controls it. At this level, you discover the body isn't a prison, as they claim, but a remarkable instrument. One that can redirect its signals if you know the language. The language is transformation. When energy rises and you don't release it, start moving it. Training, breathwork, writing, deep silence, targeted focus. Every deliberate movement is transformation. Every minute of quiet endurance is stored, intelligent energy that knows where to go. You start noticing you don't tire as quickly. Your focus stretches further than before. Your gaze grows more precise. Your voice carries more presence. It isn't a trick. It's the same old energy, repurposed. The mind enters a new phase. It learns to connect pleasure with achievement, not emptiness. To seek the high in control, not surrender. To crave meaning more than gratification. This is the human turning point. From a servant of momentary urges to a commander who moves his drives at will. Desire no longer knocks to dictate to you. It waits for your command to become measured action. Here the line appears between those who talk about power and those who live it. Power isn't a shout. It's stillness governed by an unshakable mind. Power is feeling the wave inside you and smiling because you know it won't drown you anymore. Real psychological transmutation doesn't happen in books. It happens when the body meets a surge and reroutes it without losing heat. Then you realize willpower isn't an idea. It's a new electrical pathway in your brain. With time, you shift into a different rhythm. You move less, but you impact more. You speak less, but you're heard more. You ask for less, but you give more. Because you've become, simply, a self-sufficient system. When the fire settles inside you, your presence becomes a field of order. Things turn toward you as iron turns to a magnet. People don't know why, but they sense you're different. As if you walk at another speed, in another time, with eyes that don't scatter and a breath that doesn't pant. You don't need to demand respect. You broadcast it. The energy you use to dump into pleasure now radiates through your look, your pace, your silence. Those who stand before you don't see muscles. They see equilibrium. A man unmoved by bait, unprovoked by comparison. And then something stranger happens. People start calibrating themselves to your presence. The woman before you lowers her voice without being asked. The man debating you chooses his words without knowing why. Children quiet down. Noise thins. Not because you're harsh, because you're clear. Clarity is energy. Hold it, and life condenses around you instead of scattering. Everything false drifts away on its own. Everything genuine moves toward you without advertisement. This isn't mysticism. It's precise psychology. The human brain reads body language before words. When your body is balanced, it sends a message to everyone around you. I'm here. I don't need. I'm not afraid. That message reshapes the entire field. In this phase, you become a source of stability, not noise. Your presence redistributes tension in any room. The weak feel safe near you. The strong feel respect. The fake feel suffocated. This is how contagious presence begins. You become the living reminder of what a person can be once he reclaims himself. No slogans, no advice. It's enough that you are. You learn something new. Leadership isn't requested. It's practiced from the inside. Power taught by example cuts deeper than 1,000 empty speeches. All of this unfolds without announcements or claims. What's built in silence is understood in silence. Those who understand you don't need to hear you. When you grow strong, your silence will be tested. Those who can't stand your steadiness will provoke you. Those who doubt your independence will try to tempt you back into the old game. The world will probe you to see if what's in you is real or a phase. True strength isn't measured by a roar or a fist, but by how little can move you. To stay composed under provocation. To refuse to justify yourself when misunderstood. To never bow just to prove you stand higher. The world distrusts the independent man. It sees him as a threat to the order. So it will recast your strength as arrogance and accuse you of coldness because you don't pant like the rest. Remember, what they call cold is your equilibrium, a temperature they've never known. Everyone looks for their reflection in others. If they don't find their weakness mirrored in you, they'll attack. Not because you harmed them, but because you reminded them they could be better. That's the heaviest lesson a man can deliver without saying a word. They'll try to seduce you with praise. They'll say, "Teach us how you did it." But often the hidden aim isn't learning. It's draining your secret. Your secret is that you don't depend on applause. You've found a pleasure deeper than pleasure in discipline itself. You've tasted the meaning of control and no longer need witnesses. Here, you shift from trainee of will to guardian of will. Each day, you remember you no longer belong to yourself alone. You've become an example to those watching without your knowledge. Your younger brother, your colleague, the woman who reads you in silence. They're all watching to see if a human can truly live without dependency. This is where the responsibility of presence begins. Power is no longer a privilege. It's an honorable burden. Every mistake multiplies its impact. Every relapse disorients the ones who followed. So you stay vigilant. You understand freedom isn't a prize. It's a continuous test. If you pass it, you'll know you've crossed the last inner gate. You no longer just control yourself. You manage your existence the way a commander moves his army. With wisdom, with firmness, without display. Survive the trial, and your inner rhythm changes. You no longer move from fear or hunger, but from awareness. You feel you're no longer resisting, you're directing. What used to be a battle becomes engineering. Everything you gained from patience and discipline slips quietly into your smallest choices. How you sit, how fast you speak, how long you pause before answering. all signs of an internal system that regulates itself, needs no orders, and doesn't live on reflex. At this stage, freedom stops being an episode and becomes a stable state. You wake up knowing what you want. You work because you decided, not because you were forced. You face temptation the way a veteran faces an old enemy, with a tired smile that's full of certainty. Power here isn't seen, it's felt. People think you've grown calm. They don't realize it isn't calm. It's total control of chaos. You no longer discharge, you produce. You don't run, you confront. You don't wait for conditions, you make them. This is the difference between mastering a moment and reprogramming an entire life. You've left the territory of reacting to life and entered the territory of leading it. Every decision becomes a personal declaration of freedom. Jung described this precisely. When a person completes the journey of individuation, he returns to himself not as a slave to his drives, nor as a victim of his past, but as someone who knows the shadow is part of the light. He knows power isn't denying weakness, but carrying it without being dragged by it. The new identity needs no definition. It defines itself by action. It's the man who sees chaos outside and doesn't find it inside, who speaks little, yet every word of his weighs more than the noise of 1,000 enthusiasts. Now creation begins. You use the power you've stored to build. You plant your presence in work, in relationships, in action. You redistribute the fire in the right direction. Power is no longer your goal. It's your tool for meaning bigger than yourself. In the end, victory is never loud. It happens inside with a sound like silence. You open your eyes and realize the world hasn't changed, but your view of it has. You no longer chase triumph outside or satiation in other people. Everything you were hunting returns to you as deep quiet. The quiet of someone who can, but doesn't need to prove it. You move among people without needing to be noticed. You speak softly because your voice is an extension of conviction. You don't comment on everything. You don't rush to correct anyone. You know that those who haven't walked through fire can't understand its language. The strength you gained is no longer something you display. It's something that organizes your life in the background, like gravity doing its work without bragging. At work, in conflict, in love, you advance in measured steps, not because you fear failure, but because you understand value. Action has become devotion without a temple. Every move has an intention, and every intention has weight. You discover that control doesn't mean rigidity. It means flexibility under extreme pressure. Real power is being able to smile, knowing you could destroy, yet choosing not to. From here, freedom finally begins. Doing because you choose, not because you're compelled. Living without witnesses, because you are witness, defendant, and judge in one. The path closes on itself like a completed circle, from instinct to awareness, from chaos to order, from discharge to construction, from fear to choice. You don't need to prove you've changed. It's enough to look, to walk, to be silent. And everything is understood without a word. But the door never truly closes. Each day is a new test. Every old desire returns wearing a new suit. The only difference now is that you see it before it controls you. That is the victory that isn't recorded in battles, but in the small details no one notices. If you've reached this point, you're no longer part of the herd. You've stepped out of the circle that governs them and become the circle that rearranges the world, quietly. And if something is still moving inside you after all this, don't silence it. That something is life itself, the part that resisted every domestication to remind you you're still alive, and that the fire within you never went out. it simply learned discipline.